Welcome, everybody, to the Cover 2 podcast. I am Nick Nenad.
And I'm Jared Smith.
And today we have a big show for you guys today. A lot going on in the world of sports. A lot of things being said by a lot of people that we want to comment on. We got stuff from the NBA. A little more divisive than we thought with some of the players on restarting the season. Certain issues being raised by star players and others that we want to talk about. We will also dive in a little bit later to Roger Goodell's new comments on Colin Kaepernick and the overall protests that kind of go completely against and the opposite of what he said a couple of years ago when Colin Kaepernick was kneeling before games. We're going to give our comments on that, but we want to start the podcast with something that has just infuriated me over the last week, and that is the MLB just not being able to figure out how a season is going to start, and Rob Manfred, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, even coming out and saying he doesn't believe it is going to happen a couple days after he said that 100% the season was going to happen. So, Jared, crazy times in sports right now. I want to just read you the quotes really quickly in a 5-day span from Rob Manfred, which is the reason we're going to talk about this. And just I want you to give your comments, and then I'll give my rant after yours. So on draft day, which was I can't remember exactly which day, but I think it was June 10th. June 10th. Rob Manfred came out at the start of the broadcast on ESPN and MLB Network and said, unequivocally, we are going to play Major League Baseball this year. It's a quote from him. You can go back, watch the draft, see him say that at the beginning. 5 days later, Rob Manfred says on ESPN to Mike Greenberg in the Sports Center special, after another deal was declined by the MLBPA, another bad deal, in my opinion, he goes, I am not confident. I think there's real risk. And as long as there's no dialogue, that real risk is going to continue. So, Jared, I do have a little bit more quotes for you a little bit later about that Rob Manfred said. But your opinion about him completely flip-flopping his words and kind of not being honest with us fans.
It's, he should have just come out in the very beginning and never even said 100% there will be baseball. I think that was at a time where the National Basketball Association and Major League Hockey were, if they were just about to get their league started, or at least the players and their associations were agreeing to their league starting. And it was like, okay, well, baseball must be next, right? Because baseball has had an opportunity to see hockey and see basketball come together and form some type of agreement. So you have baseball had something to look at, right? Something to be able to say, oh, this is how it's done, right? Or maybe this is how we should come to the players when it comes to contracts or negotiations or whatever the case may be. And so there was some optimism, right? But when you come out and say 100%, you're not only telling the fans, you're not only telling the players, you're telling everybody that we will work something out, right? And then as the commissioner, when you then walk back on those steps, it basically says that we can't trust you. And I say we from a fan standpoint, I can't even imagine how the players feel, right? Because the players, it seems like, have been jerked around back and forth, left and right. The players and Major League Baseball already agreed to a 50% pay reduction, right? Obviously, at best, there was only going to be half of the games played, if not maybe 100 of the games played, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that they haven't been able to put their egos aside in a sense, and I'm not really giving the players some slack here because I feel that the players are a part of the reason why we're not playing. Both sides are not willing to budge. And at a time where we have coronavirus, a major pandemic going on, when we have national protests going on over the killing of an unarmed black man and riots and looting and everything going on in this country, sports can be a I say distraction, but I mean that in a good way. Sports can be a reason of hope for people, right? A reason for 2 or 3 hours out of your day to where maybe you're not thinking about coronavirus, or maybe you're not thinking about the protesting and all the negativity that's going on in this world. And it can be used as a platform in a positive sense. And I think that baseball, along with basketball and hockey, and football and all the sports for that matter, have an opportunity to do that, right? And to give people hope and to kind of just let people put a smile on their faces for once. And so the fact that, to me, baseball doesn't recognize that, and that's not the reason why they should be restarting the sport, but I think it is a factor and something that they should be aware of, right? And right now, it just seems like both sides are, have their heels dug into the dirt, and they're saying, well, it's my way or the highway, right? Like, the players obviously want as much money as they can get. The owners want to retain as much money as they can, and neither side is willing to budge. And to me, when it seems like money is the biggest and really only factor in this right now. And with where this country is, the fact that these people are arguing over money when most of them are millionaires, and the owners are billionaires, to me does not sit well. And so, I took it on a different light, but in a different sense, as in, with everything going on, I don't care about like a lot of the logistics, right? You guys are going to get paid something. Would you rather play baseball and get paid something, or not play and get paid nothing? Because right now, these players aren't getting paid, at least from their contracts. They may have endorsements going on, but from their Major League Baseball contracts, they're not getting paid. So apparently these guys don't mind not getting paid. Because nothing's done. It's been over 2 months. And like I said, you've had other sports that have come to agreements, right? And you've had an opportunity to look at those sports, see how they did it, use that as say, oh, hey, we can use their system. Or it just baffles me that money has gotten in the way of all of this with everything going on in the world.
Yeah, and baseball's, when they had their collective bargaining agreement meetings, and the Players Association and the MLB have debates, it is the one sport that has had the most difficulty agreeing. And I don't necessarily know why that is. There is a lot of money in baseball, as far as how much these players make. They're making more than a lot of NFL players, a lot of NBA players. That is changing somewhat with the ratings for NBA and NFL getting so high. We are going to see contracts get higher. We are going to see the league salaries get higher. But for some reason, the MLB has just it's always been a difficult thing. What irritates me about this, though, the most is just the fact that Rob Manfred, who's supposed to be the leader of leaders, is coming out here and is just not being honest with people. And I don't think that's a good look. I cited on Twitter the other day how Dana White has handled this entire coronavirus situation, where there has really been, nearly zero problems with the UFC running shows like they normally were, obviously without fans. But we are not seeing fighters get sick. We are not seeing people get hurt or people being put in danger. And then he's also going out to the media and being super honest about everything going on. We've seen, some of the other commissioners for the professional sports just not be honest or kind of grandstand certain takes to look good to the media. So I commend Dana White for what he's done. I commend the commissioner of NASCAR for getting that back up. The PGA just restarted this past weekend. A different style of sports, obviously, but and those sports just aren't as big, too, to be honest, as the MLB, NFL, NHL, and MLB. But another thing that irritated me, here's another quote, Jared, that Rob Manfred said. He said, the owners are 100% committed to getting baseball back on the field. I don't believe that because you're trying to take money out of the players' pockets. They're robbing players. I know, though, we're talking about robbing millions, and these players still making millions. They're robbing them. We've discussed this. The current deal would have Mike Trout making $35 million on a normal year, now making $8 million. Okay, it's ridiculous when you hear that. So many of the top players would be making similar money to that, and that's just not fair, right? And the MLB already agreed to what you mentioned, prorated salaries. They were going to make 50%, and that was fine. The players understood it was going to be a shortened season, and they were willing to make that deal because that's just the right way to do it. You talked about the players' responses and how when you said you talked about fans and you were wondering what the players were thinking. This is a quote from Tony Clark, who's the MLBPA leader. He said, players are disgusted that after Rob Manfred unequivocally told players and fans there would 100% be a 2020 season, he has decided to go back on his word and is now threatening to cancel the entire season. Any implication that the Players Association has somehow delayed progress on health and safety protocols is completely false, as Rob has recently acknowledged the parties are very, very close. So it sounds like he's lying to the players, too, even behind closed doors. So it's not a good look. And you mentioned the money part of this, too. It's not a good look that, yes, like what is going on in the world right now, that they are discussing, I want $1 million here. Like it just doesn't look good. And then the NHL is nearly set to go, right? The NBA, although we will discuss some concerns players have, it is way more along the line than the MLB is. And the NFL really has been just going as normal. And then, like I mentioned, 3 major sports have come back already and have started competing. One more thing I just want to talk about money-wise. In the middle of the 5 days where Manfred says 100% and then I don't think so, as far as the season starting, the MLB reached $1 billion deal with Turner Sports for playoff rights. In the middle of the statements. Like literally in the center of the 2 statements. Not a good look. And that's why I get mad when he says the owners are 100% committed to getting baseball on the field, because they just made more money. I think the previous deal was not in the billions as far as this Turner Sports deal. So they made money off the deal. So what do you think about my take on this, about how I just think a lot of these owners too need to be a bit more honest, like guys like Dana White with all that's going on.
Oh, you're exactly right. And it's either be honest or don't speak at all, right? When a microphone is put in front of your face, you don't have to say anything. Now, that's also telling when, you're being asked a question and you do not respond, or you say no comment or something like that. That can also show potentially where you stand. But you don't have to say anything as an owner, right? And you bring up a great point. The fact that the owners just signed that $1 billion deal with TNT, the owners are in it for one thing, and that is their bottom line, and making sure that bottom line does not dissolve as much as the players, right? And you're exactly right. The players are getting screwed. The owners will still make money. And I've said this on so many podcasts. I feel like I'm just pounding my hand in the sand, right? I'm not getting anywhere with this. But why don't the owners come out and tell us, or at least show us how much they are making, right, from their teams? I'm not talking about as a whole or their entire net worth, but the Angels owner, how much does he make in a year, right, in a normal year salary by being the Angels owner, right, with merchandise, with concessions, with games, all of that, everything combined, how much do they make? And then if there was a proposed 50-game season, we know what the contracts would be like for the players. We don't know what the money would look like for the owners. So how much of a hit are the owners actually taking? And if I'm a player, that's something that I would want to know, because that would then give me a negotiating tactic to say, okay, well, why do the players have to now take more than a 50% pay cut, but the owners maybe only have to take a 20% pay cut? Does that seem fair? I mean, and I don't, and obviously I don't know if the owners are really taking a 20% pay cut. I'm just using that as an example to say, why are the owners, or why would they be so hesitant to not share their information and say, well, hey, we're taking a pay cut as well, right? Because if you think about it, if they're taking a 50% pay cut, that could actually be in the owner's advantage. If they come out and say that to the public, as a fan, I'm going to say, okay, well, you know what? The owners actually they have something to lose as well. But if the owners aren't losing money like the players are, then that to me is uneven. It's not a good balance. And like you said, when with the circumstances that we are surrounded with right now, it only seems fair that these two sides have to meet somewhere in the middle. And right now, we are nowhere near that.
Yeah. And the season was potentially supposed to start around 4th of July. We're about 2 weeks away from that. And I saw a quote from Trevor Bauer, who's been very outspoken on a lot of these issues. He came out and was like, today was supposed to be the day we were supposed to start spring training. And Rob Manfred can't even be honest about, saying if the season's even going to happen. Right? It's like they're agreeing to these deals, and they're like, at the same time, they're like, well, it was supposed to start right now, though. These deals, like you guys are putting on the on the docket here. So the last deal that the MLB was proposed or did propose, excuse me, was a 72 game season with a guaranteed 70% of the players' prorated salaries. So 70% of the 50% to be exact, with a maximum of 83%. So again, they're cutting that prorated salary that was already agreed upon. That they were going to make 15 or 50% of that salary. So Mike Trout making 36, he'd make 18. Someone's making 20, they're making 10. Right? Easy to understand. And obviously the MLB said no, we're not doing that. So you asked how much owners would potentially be losing from this. It's an average of $147 million per team. We've discussed in the past that most teams make a lot more money than that. They are losing money, but that's what happens when you make an investment on a team sometimes. Sometimes you lose your money. You make an investment on a stock right now. Stock market's going crazy, right? Sometimes there's going to be a company that makes a mistake and they lose money, right? Doesn't mean you just disband the company, right? And you just don't give up on the whole thing. No, and I also think that we have a problem in this country in general with what I like to call hoarders, and that's people that like to hoard money when they have too much of it. And we see this a lot in just our United States society too, where people that are in the quote unquote 1%, they hoard all the money from everybody else. And I think this is the biggest issue with this right now, is we're seeing a lot of selfishness coming from the owners. Yes, we are seeing in some ways selfishness from the players. Players are the ones on the field though. They're the ones risking injury. Risking their lives at some point. Some guy gets hit in the head with a pitch. That could be the end of your life, obviously that's a very, very rare occurrence, but I'm just saying, like, these players are risking their livelihoods on the field. And then we have the coronavirus, obviously, now. What are the owners doing? They're sitting behind plexiglass in a box, watching the game. They've probably been tested. Everybody in the box been tested. Everybody's good. So, yes, you're right. The owners... I don't care if you are losing money, because it's obvious you will lose money. You made an investment and you probably have money on the side to deal with it, and you're not going to end up unemployed like 40 million other people in this country are right now. So Rob Manfred needs to step up. He needs to either step up or shut up, to be honest, like you mentioned. And I think the MLB just needs to figure this out, because it's a terrible look. With what is going on, that these guys are arguing, nickel and diming each other left and right. It just looks stupid to me.
I in saying all this, I know we need to wrap up and move on to the next segment. I don't see baseball happening this year. I really don't. And
it's getting less and less for me too.
I know there's, still some optimism, and it's not like a deal can't get done, right? And there's still time for a 50-game season, as well as the playoffs. I just, with where the players are and Major League Baseball, as far as the owners and the commissioner are, if I'm a player, it's like, yes, I want to get paid, but I'm not. Basically, the owners are saying you're going to have to come and meet us like 75% of the way, right? It doesn't seem like the owners are going to budge. And so it seems like the players would be losing out on this deal. And right, like you mentioned, with the coronavirus as well, the players are the ones that are going to be taking more of a risk. They're the ones that are going to be around more people, while the owners get to sit back in their suites and their private jets, and they're in a safer position, let's say. But if I'm the players, why would I want to come back and play for owners that are just completely greedy, and they don't necessarily care about my health? They don't care about how much money I'm losing, as long as their bottom line is not affected as much as ours. So I really don't see baseball playing games this year, and it's like almost unimaginable to say. I 2 months ago, it'd have been like, oh yeah, they're going to come to some type of an agreement at some point. Once one professional sports league gets going, you'll hopefully see a run on other leagues, right? And we did see that for a minute, and now baseball has completely halted that. And I don't know, man. I think we are going to go the entire season, the entire summer, without having baseball.
Well, I mean, it's getting closer and closer to the limit of the possible amount of games that the MLB has agreed upon. I forget exactly what the deal is, but there's a certain amount of games they have to play.
Right, because what are you gonna do? You're gonna play like 20 games.
Yeah.
This isn't basketball, right?
Yeah.
Where you can, or the NFL, where you can play 20 games. Like in baseball, you're absolutely right, but they're getting to that deadline of, okay, well, we get to a certain time point in the summer or in the calendar year, and there's only X amount of regular season games to be played, because at some point you have to save time for the playoffs. Yeah. Right? So what do? You play a 20 or 30 game season and you have 4 playoff teams?
Dude, yeah, no, it's not. I mean, it's not conducive of success. And I do agree with you. I am leaning more negatively as far as if I think this season is going to happen. I do still think they will figure something out. But like we're talking about, if the commissioner is almost threatening to not have a season, that's where there's even a whole other problem, right? Because it's not even that, okay, well, we just can't come to terms. Now we have the commissioner coming out and defending the owners and doing all this stuff and saying that, oh, well, we probably won't have a season now. Instead of saying, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to figure things out. It's not a positive message coming from Rob Manfred. So why should we think positively about it? It's a bad situation, and obviously as a baseball fan myself, I'm super disappointed that we couldn't figure something out, because we see with this Korean baseball league too, baseball still looks similar without fans, right? You can still do baseball without fans, and it's going to look, in my opinion, at least a little better than basketball being played in like a little high school gym with no fans, right? It's going to look better than hockey being played without a crowd, or football being played without a crowd. The crowds in baseball mean less. And so as far as with an effect on the game. So I just think this was one of the easiest sports to be able to watch without fans, and they've just messed this entire thing up. Switching topics to something similar, the NBA obviously announced a couple weeks ago that they were restarting their season. They have this big plan at the ESPN the Wide World of Sports in Orlando, Florida, to have all the teams there, quarantine, 8-game season, multiple playoff games, 20 play. They had this big plan, right? Well, naturally, there has been some opposition. The crazy thing about this is the opposition, the reasoning for some of the players, it's very interesting. And what we're talking about here is Kyrie Irving, Dwight Howard, Avery Bradley, and others coming out and saying that they don't want to start the season because they think it will inhibit their way of stopping racial injustice in this country. Essentially, it would affect their ability to be part of the Black Lives Matter movement. Jared, your thoughts on this? There have been a lot of players that have come out and said they're still going to play, including LeBron James. Your thoughts on Kyrie and others saying that about the restart of the NBA season?
So I actually want to get to LeBron James first, but just very quickly, Kyrie Irving has always, kind of steered in his own direction. He's always been one. He's not just gonna jump on a bandwagon because other players are doing it. He will be the only player out of the entire NBA association to think a certain way, right? He thought the Earth was flat. And that's obviously just a very funny, different quote that he had, but he just has a different way of thinking, and if he believes in something, he is going to wholeheartedly stick by that, no matter how outrageous it may sound or if no one is backing him up. And saying that, you have the opposite side where LeBron James has this entire time, right, for the whole 2.5 months that there's been no basketball, has wanted to return to play. Now, you can say one of the reasons is because the Lakers are the number one seed in the West, and they were one of the favorites to not only make it to the finals, but win the championship. And obviously LeBron, that's one of his goals, is to bring a championship to LA. And you also have the likes of guys like, oh my gosh, who's the Clippers guard? It's come out to
Lou Williams.
It's not Lou Williams. I will think of his name in a minute.
He was one of the players that came out and said he wanted the season to restart.
You have players that are backing LeBron James because LeBron James' voice is that big and that powerful.
Patrick Beverley.
Thank you. So when LeBron James speaks, many people listen. And not to say that they are just jumping on board, but LeBron James obviously does not speak without thinking first most of the time. And so you do have players that are saying, well, hey, if LeBron's going to play, then we're all playing, right? And then you have the other side where Kyrie is saying, no, we have bigger problems going on in the world. We have Dwight Howard of the Lakers, Avery Bradley of the Lakers, who seem to be on the side of Kyrie Irving, therefore creating some tension just within the Lakers organization as to, obviously some players of the status of LeBron James want to play, and then you have other role players who don't. And I think one of the major things that the NBA and the players have agreed to is that if, as a player, if you do not want to go and play, you don't have to. No one is forcing you to go and play. So you're more than welcome to stay back at home, and not play. Now, you're not going to collect a paycheck, obviously, because if you're not playing, you're not going to get paid. But every player does get to make their own decision. I don't think that this is as much hot water as Major League Baseball, but this can be an issue to where, let's just talk about games specifically, right? Let's say that the logistics of all this comes together and the NBA season starts July 30th. You could look at a Lakers lineup with LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and a bunch of role players, right? Because Avery Bradley might not play. Dwight Howard might not play. So do they bring guys up from the G League? That's an interesting dynamic. And I think that can happen for every team because Carmelo Anthony, the Blazers, has said that he's not said that he's 100% sure if he wants to play. Obviously, he has a family, he has kids, and this isn't just about him. So it's a very interesting dynamic, and I just want to take it to a basketball perspective for once, because it seems like all we are talking about is just a lot of negativity and a lot of things that aren't involving the actual sport. And I wanted to just kind of bring to light what it will be like if we actually had games and talk about some actual basketball play for a minute.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned something earlier too. You said that sports are an outlet for people in these type of times. The coronavirus, obviously, with everybody just staying home, man, would sports have been awesome, right? If they somehow could have been played during the last 3-4 months, right? What we've been dealing with. Sports, during the Black Lives Matter movement, sometimes you just need to get away from the TV, right? You see what's going on. You see that video of George Floyd. You see the people rioting and looting in certain areas, and you see the protests. You see what police are doing. Sometimes you want to just go watch a basketball game because you're like, you know what? Can't sit on Twitter here all day and watch all this stuff. It's making me angry. And as far as like, I have no problem with Kyrie Irving, Dwight Howard, Avery Bradley, and others wanting to spread the message of Black Lives Matter. I have absolutely no problem with that. I didn't have a problem with Colin Kaepernick doing it either. Okay. But I just think it's a little much. As in, I don't really see how much restrictions they're talking about. Is Kyrie Irving need to be at every single protest? No. To be honest, he doesn't. Does he need to be at every meeting with every governor? You can call the guy on the phone if you have to. You are helping out a lot of people here by playing sport. The other thing is, too, is Kyrie Irving even playing this season, too? But I thought he was injured as well. Like, was he supposed to play this season? And so that's another irritating thing to me is he's coming out here making us think about this. He might not even be healthy enough to play. And he's coming out here and bringing this up and kind of getting in the way of trying to restart the season when, hey, man, like, if you're not playing, though, go ahead and do the other stuff. Like you don't have to play because we didn't expect it. Like, Dwight Howard, Avery Bradley, different story. If they want to go do that, they can do that. If they think that's a bigger deal, all to them. I have no problem with that. We saw Colin Kaepernick do it, right?
Really quickly,
Yes.
he's out for the season with a shoulder injury.
Exactly. So what do we talk like why are we, I don't want to say this, but like, why are we listening to that guy's perspective when he's not even going to play, right? Like, there is some point of it where, like, okay, Kyrie, yeah, he might have a little bit of a point here, but like, he also isn't going to play. So why does he care if other guys go and play, right? It's weird to me. And LeBron James makes a good point here. He says that his position is clear. He says that he believes he can affect social change while playing. And he said he did it in 2014 when he called for Donald Sterling's removal from the NBA. And in 2012, James and his teammates from the Miami Heat wore hoodies in response to the death of Trayvon Martin. That was the ESPN article. I read that, by the way, on. So, again, if LeBron James, who's the biggest and most important NBA player, thinks he can, I don't see why Kyrie Irving also couldn't figure out ways and maybe talk to LeBron, talk to other guys, and figure out a way to do this. And why Dwight Howard and Avery Bradley can just, hey, we're going to play the season. It means a lot to the fans. It means a lot to everybody that we're going to finish the season. We might have a chance to win a championship. Let me figure out a way for you guys to get connected with people and all that stuff. But I do think it's a little strange on Kyrie Irving's side that he's not even playing, and he's coming up with these scenarios and trying to almost cause an issue in the whole thing. Although the issue he's talking about is a great one, and it should be, obviously, this should be, the Black Lives Matter movement should be kept going, and it should not just stop because sports come back. But I find it a little irritating that he's not even going to be playing, and he's bringing this up, the main guy bringing it up.
Well, you brought up a great point at the very beginning of your argument, in your statement, in that you're right. What does Kyrie Irving plan to continue to attend protests? But is that something that is in the language of the agreement between the NBA and the players, that when the players do get to Orlando, that they won't be allowed to protest? They won't be allowed to.
I mean, I can almost guarantee it. It's a risk of coronavirus to be protesting anyways, whatever you are protesting, you are at risk of getting the coronavirus. There is no way you can say that that's not true. I'm sure we will see a spike in cases with these protests. Not that they weren't right to do, but the facts are the facts. Unless the government's been lying to us for some reason about all this, people are going to get sick by protesting. There's a better chance of you contracting the coronavirus. So there's no way the NBA will allow people to protest. And I think that's what these guys are talking about here.
Right, right. And what I would like to see, from Kyrie Irving's standpoint and from LeBron James' standpoint is, okay, LeBron James is saying that he believes that he can still affect change,
Yeah.
and he can still do the necessary things needed while also playing basketball and trying to win a championship, right? So I would like to hear from LeBron what those steps would be. So let's say he is in Orlando for a month. How is he still going to be able to do those necessary things that he's talking about? Give us an outline. And the same thing from Kyrie Irving, right? I would like to see, okay, well, if you don't think it's a good idea, why? What would be hindering you so much by going to Orlando that you don't feel that you would be doing your due diligence and using your platform to affect change in a positive way, right? And
yeah.
Here's the thing. I just want to know a little more information as to where Kyrie Irving stands, because for right now, from what the information I've been able to look up, it's just been very much surface level of
100%.
I don't want to play because I think basketball will be having a negative impact on the roles on where our minds should be focused right now. Which, okay, yes, obviously, if you are playing basketball, you're practicing, you're studying film, you're playing games. Your time will somewhat be taken away from, fully, protesting or fully using your platform to do whatever you need to do, right? So that is very true. But what is it that you're trying to accomplish? What is it that you're trying to do? And I would like to hear a little more information from Kyrie Irving. And then I feel like I can make a better judgment as to, okay, Kyrie, you know what? You bring up some great points. You're right. Maybe we shouldn't be playing basketball right now. Or in your sense, maybe Kyrie Irving is taking it a little bit too far, and it should be more on LeBron James' side of, what, we can do both. We can multitask. We can still play the game, right? We can put some smiles on people's faces. We can give them, something to cheer for, right? While also being able to still promote the Black Lives Matter movement. And do what we need to do in that sense. So I just want to hear a little more information from both sides as to what they're thinking, because right now a lot of it is just surface level, and I'm kind of like this.
Yeah, no, I agree with you too. That's what I've seen too, and that's what's irritated me about Kyrie is it's like, hey man, you're giving a problem, but you're not giving a solution. You're just complaining almost about something without. And the stuff has been like it's the type of stuff where they just say it's the blanket statements about racial injustice in the country. Yeah, we all understand that, Kyrie. But what we're saying is, why can't you use your social media platforms? Why can't you use your voice in interviews, in post game press conferences, and during the games, and certain like kneeling for the national anthem or something like. Let's figure out those ways. There are plenty of ways you can do stuff. And get on the phone with LeBron James. Get on the phone with people that have done this before, where they've put social issues on the court. The NBA has been more than happy to accept this too. It's not like the NFL, which we'll get to in a second.
The NBA is one of the most progressive leagues when it comes to letting players voice their opinion. The owners, for the most part, stay out of it and let players express themselves.
Yeah.
And be unified as one. To where you're right, other leagues, specifically the NFL, are a lot more strict and guidelines, and we can't have this certain look for our league because it's going to be bad and we're going to lose fans. The NBA says, to hell with that. If we lose fans because of something that we are protesting and something we believe in, then we didn't want those fans in the first place.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's the way a lot of people are thinking now too, after just seeing what's been going on. This is the way I think too. Yeah, a Twitter follower that doesn't want to accept certain things, they can just not be my follower. You know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. So, yeah, very interesting stuff. We're gonna kind of continue on this topic of the racial injustice stuff and continuing it going into the NFL here we've seen recent statements from the NFL commissioner Roger Goodell about Colin Kaepernick rejoining the league. Obviously, you guys know the story about Colin Kaepernick. We talked about it in our last podcast. We've talked about it before. He was protesting police brutality, exactly what everybody is protesting now, kneeling during the national anthem. It caused a lot of rift between certain fans. It caused a rift with the NFL and Colin Kaepernick, and essentially Kaepernick has been blackballed from the NFL ever since. Well, Goodell, on a recent interview on ESPN, had these statements to say about Colin Kaepernick rejoining the NFL. He said, if Kaepernick wants to resume his career in the NFL, then obviously it's going to take a team to make that decision. But I welcome that. Support a club a club making that decision and encourage them to do that. He also made a statement also on the just overall Black Lives Matter movement and how in some ways the NFL was wrong for their stance earlier. He said, or a couple of years ago, he said what they were talking about, meaning a lot of the players that were outspoken, including Colin Kaepernick, about police brutality, about kneeling on during the national anthem, what they were talking about and what they were protesting and what they were trying to bring attention to was playing out right in front of us, and tragically. And so all of us saw that, and it was difficult for all of us. And so that was an important point for all of us. That is in relation to what is happening now. Jared, these statements are kind of contradictory of a couple years ago, the way the NFL acted about this. So what is your opinion about them adjusting their opinions about Colin Kaepernick and about the Black Lives Matter movement and about the flag kneeling incidents that happened a couple of years ago? What are your thoughts on all this?
Their opinions mean absolutely nothing. Could care less. Roger Goodell can come out and say all he wants, that he supports the Black Lives Matter movement, that he stands with his players. It doesn't matter to me. The fact that NFL players and other athletes had to make a video that was directly pointed at the NFL and Commissioner Roger Goodell to basically take a stance, right? It took all of that just for Roger Goodell to come out and make a video. And by the way, most NFL owners, like I don't know if there is an NFL owner that has actually come out yet in support. I've seen coaches, I've seen other personnel within organizations come out other than players. But I really have like Jerry Jones of the Dallas Cowboys, one of the most recognizable faces in all of sports, right? As an owner, from an owner's perspective, has been crickets, silence, absolutely nothing, right? So for Roger Goodell to finally come out after players have to make a video basically pleading with the NFL to come out and make a statement, to me it means nothing. The NFL should have been in front of this, right? The NFL has 70% of African Americans, Black athletes, right? That is the one of the main driving forces of your league, right? Without Black players, the league is not.
Oh no, it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
Like it
right?
just beyond. I mean, I don't know the statistics, but yeah, it's.
So you would think that the NFL would be at the head of this, as far as wanting to be progressive, wanting to be open-minded, listening to your players when they are speaking, listening to Colin Kaepernick when he is peacefully protesting, right? But no, what you do is you blackball Colin Kaepernick and you don't let him in the league for the last 4 years. And it's interesting because here's another quote from Roger Goodell. He says, well, listen, if Colin Kaepernick, wants to resume his career in the NFL, then obviously it's going to take a team to make that decision. Interesting, because last week, the Seattle Seahawks head coach Pete Carroll was interviewed and said that in 2017, they brought in Colin Kaepernick for a workout. And Pete Carroll said that they were close to signing Colin Kaepernick, but they didn't. When asked why, he said, I don't remember. That's a bunch of bull. I don't remember as in, oh, yeah, I do remember, but I can't say it because it's going to make the NFL look bad, as in we couldn't sign Colin Kaepernick because the NFL commissioner, along with the other owners, did not want Colin Kaepernick on an NFL team, even though he was better than 95% of the backups in the league and probably better than 50% of the starting quarterbacks that were in the league. So for Roger Goodell to finally come around and all of a sudden see the light, right, just out of nowhere, to me, I don't want to hear from Roger Goodell anymore. I only want to see action, and I think that is something that this whole Black Lives Matter movement has trying to focus on is action. Words do not mean much of anything anymore, right? Anyone can come out and say that they agree that Black Lives Matter and they agree with the movement and all of this, but words don't mean anything. We need to see actions take place, right? So as long as Roger Goodell is in his chair, as long as the other 32 owners get to stay in their chair, I don't see much change happening in the NFL because they control everything, right? Almost every aspect of it. I really don't care. Good for Roger Goodell for coming out and saying something, but to me, throw it away, throw it in the trash. Doesn't mean anything.
I'll use this as a way of adding some comedy into this. I'm gonna as one of my favorite professional wrestlers, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson would say, finally, the NFL figured out the protests. Like, doesn't it kind of sound like it doesn't sound ridiculous that it took an entire professional sports league and all 32 owners, maybe not all, but most of the NFL owners, 3-4 years to figure out, oh wait, Colin Kaepernick wasn't kneeling to disrespect the troops, and he doesn't hate the flag, and he's not trying to piss off middle America. It was because of police brutality. Oh, like, how stupid does that make the NFL look, right? And you talked about the fact that most of the NFL, the majority of the NFL is black players. Okay, the majority of NBA players are also black. Look at the way the NBA handles it. Why can't the NFL just handle it the exact same way? It's the same exact thing. It's so weird. And you mentioned the owners, right? Well, Jared, all they're thinking about is their bottom line. This goes back to what we were talking about with baseball. They think that there's going to be fans that don't show up because people are kneeling. Do you know how many minimal amount of fans are not going to show up because of kneeling? And take the approach you mentioned earlier. If those fans hate the kneeling of the flag so much that they won't go to NFL games, that just means other fans can come in, right? We will just leave those fans in the dust. Whatever. They just don't have to watch the product. The NFL is already the most watched sport in America. They can lose a couple fans over this, right? So yeah, I agree with you, Jared. It's a little too late for Roger Goodell. I do commend him for actually saying it. Like, Jesus, he finally came out and said it.
Well, he also didn't even mention Colin Kaepernick's name. So he came out and quote unquote apologized
during his original a couple weeks ago.
He did not even mention Colin Kaepernick's name, and then in a more recent interview, I believe it was yesterday, actually mentioned Colin Kaepernick's name. But it's little things like that, right? How tough is it to actually say Colin Kaepernick's name and to admit, right? He just kind of scurried around it and saying, oh yeah, we're sorry and we missed the ball and everything, but it's just it's baffling to me, right? And you want to bring up the money and the owners and all of that. Well, guess what? And the National Basketball Association, I don't see those owners losing money over letting their players be progressive, letting their players be open-minded and speak their minds and wear shirts in pregame warmups, right? I actually see fans respecting the NBA even more, right? And I feel that the NBA is the second most profitable sport in North America next to the NFL, right? So it's not like they're losing money and they're going in the wrong direction. So you would think that the NFL, you would think that Major League Baseball, you would think that other leagues would, hey, here's a blueprint. The NBA has a blueprint for how to handle these situations, or at the very least, just be there for your players, right?
Yeah.
And you're right. Most people that have common sense are going to realize that, yes, this isn't about money. This is literally about your players are crying for help right now. Your players are asking for the owner's help to be on their side. And why it's so difficult for the commissioner or for owners to step up and say something and be on their side without having to be told to, right? I think that's the other
Yeah.
big thing as well. We are past the point of owners and the commissioner taking their own initiative, right? They're having to be told to do things now. And at that point, then when they come out and say something, it doesn't have the same meaning to me. They need to be able to be proactive, come out and do it on their own and say it with their own words and not because they're being forced to.
Yeah, and again, because the topic of this podcast has kind of been a lot about just, transparency, right? You said either say something or don't say something, right? Don't lie like Rob Manfred did. We're seeing a lot of NFL owners just not say something, and that does say something in a way, right? It does prove that they may not want to hurt their bottom line, or it does show that they aren't as quote unquote woke as a lot of other people here in this country. And I just personally still think it has to do with money, almost all, and it goes back to the hoarding issue of money's the most important thing, racial injustice isn't, stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, and you talk about the NBA too, how players have been very socially conscious, right? We saw the Donald Sterling stuff. There were NBA players that kneeled when all the NFL players were kneeling. Has the NBA been hurt by that at all? No. It's like the ratings for the NBA finals just get higher and higher, even when we knew the Warriors were gonna win every single year. People were still watching the finals. Like, hey, let's say there's a chance. Like, the sport is so popular. The NFL, it's and I get it too. I understand that there are a lot more Southern teams per se, in a lot more racially divided areas. Obviously, we need to change that. It's the whole point of the Black Lives Matter movement. So I can understand why the NFL would be a little more shy on the whole kneeling during the flag thing, because there's just a lot of idiots out there in the South that just don't understand, and there's a lot of Southern teams. But it's ridiculous. You got to take the approach of, we're going to take this stance because this is the right way. We're not going to care about money. And if there's fans that want to leave, they can leave. We didn't want those fans anyways. Right now, the NFL or has been saying for the last couple of years, oh no, we want every fan possible. It doesn't matter what their opinions are, and it doesn't matter, who they are. We want every fan.
So quick question for you.
Yeah.
With all this going on, right? Let's say that the NFL actually does get to play games this year. They start on time in September. Do you see, well, this can be, two different ways. Do you see Colin Kaepernick trying out for a team? And also,
question.
do you see a team willing to actually sign Colin Kaepernick? So I think it goes both ways. Obviously, Colin Kaepernick has to be interested, has to, and say, I want to play again. And Roger Goodell wasn't wrong in the fact that it's going to take an NFL team to actually come out against the grain and sign him. So it's going to take a collective thing here. But do you see either of those situations happening?
I would think that Colin Kaepernick is not too excited about joining the NFL, because I think he sees the stuff we're seeing too, where he sees just this total one-sided, like, we're just trying to pander, right? Essentially, because that's what the NFL is trying to do here. But I do think, and this is kind of funny because we just talked about how Kyrie couldn't do it. Like, I think Colin Kaepernick's biggest platform would be the NFL, right? For his stance on what he's been talking about. And I do personally think that there is going to be there is going to be a lot of quote unquote silent, peaceful protests in the NFL next year because of police brutality, because clearly Kaepernick's message didn't resonate, and in some ways because of the way the government treated him and the way the NFL treated him and treated the police brutality movement and the Black Lives Matter movement a couple of years ago. I personally think that it's one of the reasons why we're talking about it again. It was kind of silenced, and in a lot of ways caused racially insensitive incidents to keep happening because of the way Kaepernick's message was silenced. But back to what you asked me, I absolutely do think a team will at least bring him in for a workout and consider signing him. Do I see him getting signed? Hard to answer without looking at the rosters and seeing who actually would would really consider him. I don't know the backups on every team off the top of my head. I would assume there are some terrible quarterbacks on some NFL rosters right now. And with the fact that training camp hasn't started, might as well give a guy a tryout, right? It'd be interesting to see how it's been a long time since Colin played, too. So I think he would absolutely need like a training camp to get ready. But I do see him being brought in by some teams. I just don't know who they are, and I would have to do a little deeper dive on some rosters just to figure out properly if I do think. But I'm thinking more positively on this, and I do think a team will bring him in, and it will likely be a team that wasn't against him a lot, if you know what I'm saying, like a team that was kind of more progressive. You mentioned the Seahawks. That's why it was kind of interesting that they came out and they said that they said that Pete Carroll had that quote, because it kind of gives away the fact that like they actually were going to do it, and they've been in a lot of ways a political team over the last couple of years with guys like Richard Sherman on their team. They've been out there protesting some stuff. So it was interesting to see the Seahawks had that, but it would be a team like that that's kind of been socially woke in a lot of ways, not one of these teams that hasn't been. And there are a couple teams, and I'm not going to list them, but I do not see bringing in Colin Kaepernick for a workout. Absolutely not. But yeah, I do see him getting some. It'll be interesting to see too, because there is clearly a different vibe from the NFL now than it even was when he was doing those ridiculous workouts last year too. So we'll just see. We'll see.
Interesting. Yeah. I think there will be a team or teams, plural, that will take more of an interest in Colin Kaepernick and want to potentially bring him in for a workout. If I'm Colin Kaepernick, there's no way I'm going back to the NFL.
I'm kind of with you on that too. I've been trying to think it would happen either.
Speaking for Colin Kaepernick, I've been trying to go back to the NFL for the last 4 years. And now all of a sudden, because of this Black Lives Matter movement, because of everything going on, because of the protesting, now the NFL all of a sudden decides to wake up. Now the NFL wants to open the doors to let me back in. No way. If Colin Kaepernick goes back and signs with an NFL team, I think that is doing nothing but giving the NFL credit. And the NFL doesn't deserve credit for jack in this situation. If I'm Colin Kaepernick, I say thanks, but no thanks. If anything, I use the NFL as much as I can to get to get what I'm talking about out there, to use that platform. But there is no way that I'm suiting up for an NFL team after what the NFL did to Colin Kaepernick. No way.
I disagree with you a little bit on that, because I do think that the NFL would provide him the biggest pedestal to do it. And I get what you're saying, but I do think that if a team came and was very honest and was, just very apologetic, and they did say, hey, we're going to give you a legitimate chance. We could care less what you do next season as far as protesting. We think you're a good enough quarterback. I still think there's a chance he looks at that and goes, you know what, I'm going to try this out and maybe stick it to – what's the best way to stick it to the NFL than by being successful and proving that everybody that disagreed with him was wrong about his abilities and about all that stuff. That's where I have to disagree on that. I do think that saying no 100% to the NFL is not the best choice. But yeah, use them. Use them if you have to. Use them if you have to.
Oh, not if you have to. You use them.
Yeah.
Use them all day. I just for what the NFL did to Colin Kaepernick, and then for him to just get signed all of a sudden this offseason, it doesn't sit right with me.
No, it doesn't.
I get what you're saying. Obviously, the NFL is such a huge platform, and Colin Kaepernick would be able to have his voice heard on a more of a national stage.
Yeah.
That potentially right now, I don't like the look of after what they did to him, and then for him to go back to an organization a league that did him so dirty, did him so wrong, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like I don't know. Maybe he'll be the bigger person, and shake hands and have somewhat of a clean slate. I know that if that were me, that would be a very difficult pill to swallow. And I don't know if I could ever really forgive the NFL for what they've done to Colin Kaepernick, right? Because they picked him as being the bad guy, right? As why are you kneeling? And obviously we don't need to go into all that, but to all of a sudden just flip the script and be like, oh no, Colin, you're really good. We're behind what you're doing. We believe in your peaceful protesting. Like I said, actions speak louder than words. And right now, all the NFL is doing is talking. I don't want to hear them talk anymore. I want to see them act.
Yeah, and you could see Colin do something like take the league minimum and just say, this is not about money. This is about getting my message out there and my love of football. Could see something like that too. I would hope that money doesn't get involved in anything he does, because it does hurt his message as well. And I personally did not take too kindly when he was paid off from a lawsuit from the NFL and kind of disappeared from the public eye too. I thought that wasn't the best look either. So I would hope that if this stuff does happen, money doesn't come up with Colin, because I think it will hurt his image a tiny bit and will hurt his message, only because of what's happened in the past year or two. So yeah, very interesting stuff. Still a lot going on in sports. We're getting closer, Jared, though. Like, we got PGA back. UFC is running like normal. It seems like the NBA will have a season somewhat. And the NFL is looking good too. And I'll tell you this too. My brother is supposed to report to Yale to start practicing football in August.
Really?
So just a little message. Yeah, a little behind the scenes. Exactly. So there is some stuff going on. And I do think, well, besides baseball, we will have most of the sports happening sooner or later. But yeah, we still have a gamut of topics to talk about every single week. But yeah, good podcast today, man. That was a fun one. But yeah, so we'll see you guys next week. Another Cover 2 podcast, just like this week. Hopefully we have more information on the MLB. Hopefully they can get their heads out of their asses, to be honest. And I hope that we get more clarity in Kyrie Irving's message and more clarity in the NFL's message as well. But I'm Nick Nenad.
I'm Jared Smith.
And this has been the Cover 2 podcast. See you guys next week.